So I've had several people reach out to me about the video I did about Liz Cheney saying she was going to be voting for Kamala Harris, and she said that her father, Dick Cheney, would be as well. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me and be like, Brando, why are you suddenly celebrating Dick and Liz Cheney voting for Kamala Harris? Don't you remember what Dick Cheney did as vice president? I said in my video that I was not giving him a pass for the things that he did. I think the Bush administration was one of the worst administrations this country has ever known. Not giving him a pass for it at all. But we're at a point in American history where I feel like American democracy is threatened like never before. And if that means standing alongside Dick Cheney or the devil himself to vote for Kamala Harris, I feel like that it needs to be done to save our democracy. And if Dick Cheney influences one old school Republican who's still kind of teetering on that fence and don't know which way to go, if they say, well, Dick Cheney said it's okay, so I'm going to do it, or if someone says, well, Liz Cheney said it's okay, I'm going to do it, then I'm going to be for it. I'm going to be glad that they endorsed Kamala Harris. It doesn't mean I'm giving them a pass for what they done, and it doesn't mean that I would vote for Liz Cheney if she run against Kamala later. I'm not going to. I'm still going to disagree with her on policy. I'm still going to think that her dad did a lot of damage as vice president. But right now, with democracy on the line, if that's what we're talking about, then yes, I will stand alongside Darth Vader and vote for Kamala Harris. But I want to pull up this article here from Midas Touch, because the point I was really going for in my video is that Donald Trump got so extreme that it caused Dick Cheney to vote for a Democrat. And it also just goes to show how uneducated MAGA truly is on politics. Because if you are one of these people that thinks Dick Cheney is a Republican in name only, you do not understand politics. And it tells me that you only started following it when Donald Trump came down the escalator. Because anyone knows that you can't get any more Republican than Dick Cheney. But in this article here from Midas Touch, you'll see right here that Donald Trump is very upset. He's very upset, and he calls Cheney an irrelevant RINO. Trump's unhinged rant over Dick Cheney's endorsement of Kamala Harris. Now let's dive into this and read it just a little bit here. Trump posted an unhinged rant to Truth Social, blasting former Republican Vice President Dick Cheney for endorsing Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. Trump called Cheney an irrelevant RINO, yet felt the need to post a wall of text about it. Now look at what he said right here. Dick Cheney is an irrelevant RINO, along with his daughter, who lost by the largest margin in the history of congressional races. They couldn't get Scooter Libby, who did so much for them, but was so unfairly treated, pardoned. I did it. He's the king of endless, nonsensical wars, wasting lives and trillions of dollars, just like Comrade Kamala Harris. I am the peace president, and only I will stop World War III. What Liz Cheney did with the Unselect Committee of Political Losers is unthinkable. She and her unselects deleted and destroyed all evidence and information. It's gone. Much of it proved that Nancy Pelosi was responsible for January 6th, didn't provide security. Cheney and others should be prosecuted for what they did, but Comrade Kamala is even worse. Now, that's what Donald Trump actually had to say about this. Goes on here. Trump then claimed that Nancy Pelosi was to blame for January 6th, not himself, who unleashed a mob of his supporters onto the Capitol building to stop the steal. Trump rounded out his unhinged rant by calling for Liz Cheney and others on the January 6th committee to be prosecuted. The Cheney family's endorsement of Kamala Harris has really gotten under his skin. And it's definitely gotten under the skin of all of MAGA. And they're calling Dick Cheney a RINO. And you just have to absolutely be completely uneducated in the political field to think that Dick Cheney is a Republican in name only. What you got to understand is Donald Trump ran as a Republican because there's no way that he would have got past the first guard as a Democrat. Democrats hold their own accountable way more often than Republicans ever do. There's no way that Democrats would have let this guy get away with the mockery that he made of women, with the mockery that he made out of prisoners of war and our veterans. We ended Howard Dean's campaign back in 2004 simply because he got too excited and screamed at a rally. John Kerry said that he had no idea Bush was going to fuck up the Iraq war as bad as he did, and people debated if John Kerry liked the temperament, and is that the kind of example we should be setting for our children. So our side has always held our own accountable, and MAGA doesn't. They love Donald Trump because he's cruel. They give him a pass for being cruel, And he can tell them that Dick Cheney is a RINO, and suddenly they're believing it. And it's the craziest thing for those of us who have been in this conversation our entire lives. For those of us that knows the difference between a Democrat and Republican, it's just absolute insanity to us that anyone could look over at Dick Cheney and say that he's not the real Republican and Donald Trump is. It would be the equivalent. I'm trying to break it down on a level that people in my part of the world would understand. But imagine if someone said that Hank Williams Jr. just wasn't a country artist, or George Jones just wasn't a country singer, and they said that Luke Bryan and Florida Georgia Line was. Yeah, and I know a lot of you that's like, man, I can't stand this new modern country. Okay, if you can understand how baffled you are when someone calls Luke Bryan a country singer, that's how baffled we are when you call Donald Trump a Republican and then turn and say that Dick Cheney is not one. And all these things that I'm saying does not give Dick Cheney a pass for his war crimes. It doesn't give him a pass for the Bush administration and all that they did. I still will go to my grave saying they were one of the worst administrations that ever came along. But right now, democracy is on the line like never before. And I just feel like that any endorsement we get, if it changes one person's mind or tips one person over and gets them to vote for Kamala Harris, then it was worth it. And I think it just goes to show how extreme MAGA has truly gotten. When you have Dick Cheney voting for a woman, you have Dick Cheney voting for a Democrat, that tells you just how far out that Donald Trump has truly went. MAGA is so extreme that Dick Cheney can't stick with them. And I remember during the Bush years thinking you couldn't get any more extreme than Dick Cheney. But in all fairness, and again, this is not me giving a pass to Bush or Cheney for anything they did, but when their time was up in 2008, we had a peaceful transfer of power. We got Barack Obama and we kept moving forward. They didn't try to stay in power. They didn't try to negotiate a third term. They didn't try to stick around. They didn't tell everyone that the election was stolen. They didn't sick people on the Capitol. They took their ball and they went home. Now, I was disappointed that they didn't get held accountable. I wanted to see them held accountable for their war crimes. I was disappointed in Obama that he really didn't go after them. That was one of my biggest disappointments with Obama, was that he didn't go after Bush and Cheney, that he said, well, it's time for us to heal. And I don't want to see us make that mistake again. When Kamala Harris is elected, I do not want to hear her say, okay, let's pardon Trump and let's heal from this. No, I want to see people held accountable. And after what Donald Trump did and the damage he did to our democracy, I want to see him held accountable. So please understand, when you hear me saying that I'm glad that Dick Cheney endorsed Kamala Harris, that is not me giving him a pass for a damn thing. That's about me realizing the importance of this election and realizing that every vote is going to count. You got to remember, my good buddy Denver Riggleman said it best: a stupid vote counts the same as an educated vote. There's a lot of stupid people out there spreading a lot of stupid misinformation around. And they're fired up and ready to vote. They think it was stolen from them once before. They think it's going to be again. They're going to be watching. They're going to be trying to create chaos. And if the devil himself, Dick Cheney, comes out and says, I'm going to be on your side during this one, then okay, thank you, Dick Cheney, for that. And when it's all over, I would like to see Donald Trump held accountable for what he's done. I don't want to see him let go. And I would love to have the conversation about the damage that Dick Cheney did. And I would never cast a vote for Liz Cheney. So again, you got to understand, it's about the importance of this election. We have to preserve and save, protect, and defend our democracy. And we do that by voting for Kamala Harris. And when you have someone like me who spent 8 years just screaming at Dick Cheney, I didn't have a platform back then to do it on, but had I had it, you would have never heard me stop. Every video would have been about Dick Cheney, not giving the guy a pass. But you've got me, who was dead against Dick Cheney, and you've got Cheney, who was dead against people like me, going, you know what? This ideology over here is so extreme that we're going to vote together. And if that's how it's got to be, then that's how it's going to have to be to get Kamala over that finish line.